So hey, before this week's show, my friend Sergio is starting a podcast where he talks about the things that he doesn't like with guests who do like those things. He's doing this to understand why people like certain things that he can't get into, but not to be convinced otherwise. Episode 0 is already out, so definitely go check it out. Anyway. For decades now, the Dragon Ball series has entertained audiences the world over through the original manga, the mega popular anime, video games, and more. For all two of you who don't know what Dragon Ball is, it was a long-running manga series by Akira Toriyama that was published in the Weekly Shonen Jump in Japan from 1984 to 1995 that follows the escapades of a monkey-tailed boy named Son Goku who is raised in the mountains away from civilization until a teenage girl named Bulma finds him while searching for the mystical orbs called Dragon Balls. Once all 7 are gathered, the dragon that emerges from them will grant their finder a single wish. Because Goku has the 4-star ball as a memento of his late grandfather Gohan, he decides to travel with Bulma in order to make sure that his last earthly tie to his late grandfather is kept safe. They run into some enemies, make new friends, and Goku learns new forms of martial arts along the way, as well as his true lineage. That's basically just the shorthand version of the beginning of the manga though. The story ends up following Goku as he grows into adulthood, gets married, and has children. The manga ultimately ends with Goku, now a grandfather, taking the benevolent young human reincarnation of his last great foe under his wing as his pupil, knowing that he won't be around to protect Earth forever and that there must always be someone ready to do so. The good folks at Toei Animation, however, the company who produced the Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z anime series, decided to go a bit further into the future with a third anime series not based on the original manga, Dragon Ball GT. And for years, fans have bickered about how terrible it is, or how stupid it is, or how it's not canon, or whatever. Thankfully, the argument about whether or not it's canon has pretty much been laid to rest thanks to the recent and still ongoing Dragon Ball Super, but that still doesn't stop people from complaining about GT at the mere mention of it. Now don't misunderstand me, Dragon Ball GT is nowhere near perfect, and it certainly isn't as good as its two predecessors. It has its problems that many have pointed out time and again, and continue to point out. Problems such as somewhat lackluster animation and off-model character designs, every character who isn't Goku being pretty much useless, turning Goku into a kid again in a failed attempt at recapturing the feeling of the original series pre-King Piccolo, some gaping plot holes here and there, Goku's pupil Oob getting almost nothing to do, weird power scaling, and recycled concepts and plots. But no one ever really talks about what GT introduced that was pretty interesting, did well, or straight up got right, quickly dismissing the idea that anything from it is worth salvaging or praising either based on the merits or lack thereof of the series itself or because of the incorrect notion that Toriyama himself hadn't worked on the show at all and that he loathes it. In fact, Toriyama actually did draw up the designs for the main trio, Giru, and the ship, and did some concept artwork. On top of that, he seems to view GT in a positive light, calling it a grand side story. That doesn't sound negative to me. At best, it shows he enjoys it, and at worst, it's dismissive. So what did GT do right, or at the very least well, or okay? Well, for one, it had pretty good pacing. In the span of 64 episodes, it went through 4 story arcs without really dragging any of them out too much. If you were to marathon Dragon Ball Z, and Dragon Ball GT, this would be a godsend, since the original uncut version of DBZ is almost unbearable to watch now because of the horrific amount of filler and padding. It also showed a bit more of Android 18 and Krillin's relationship. While we knew that they got married and had a daughter after the Cell games, we never really got a sense of how much 18 cared for her husband. When her brother Android 17 comes back and kills Krillin, though, we get to see exactly how much she cared, teaming up with Goku to take her brother down for good and avenging him. It's a minor thing, but enough attention is put on it to make it possibly the only good thing about the Super 17 saga in my opinion. Also, Super Saiyan 4. Though many fans who felt that the more recent Super Saiyan God Forms design was underwhelming have been gravitating more towards Super Saiyan 4 in terms of aesthetic, the general consensus on this radically different take on the Super Saiyan seems pretty split either because of how ridiculous it looks or because of the predictability that a new foe would need to be beaten by attaining yet another form of Super Saiyan, but from a design standpoint and how it's attained, it seems like the next logical step. Instead of needing to undergo emotional distress or train so hard he nearly physically breaks himself, Goku just needed to become a golden great ape and regain conscious control over himself. The form itself has hair that's shorter than Super Saiyan 3's but more wild and retaining the user's natural hair color, dark red fur covering a large percent of their body, and dark lining around the eyes with exotic iris coloration. It serves to remind the audience of a Saiyan's primal animalistic nature in a story arc that has its foundations laid in the long past conflict between the Saiyans and the Tuffles. That's actually something that GT had a lot to work with, the Baby Saga. Baby himself was a machine mutant parasite who was infused with the DNA of the Tuffle King, and as a result was technically a Tuffle, the race that was the dominant form of life on planet Plant before the Saiyans rose up and took over, renaming the planet after their leader, King Vegeta. Baby was able to take over people's bodies and leave a seed within them so he could brainwash them later, and when he came to Earth, he managed to do this to the whole population, including Dende and Mr. Popo. Why Earth? Well, that's the current homeworld of the only two full-blooded Saiyans left in the universe and their hybrid offspring. It makes perfect sense for Baby, a maniacal Tuffle hellbent on vengeance against the Saiyans, to turn the people they love and protect against them. It's punctuated pretty well in a short scene between Goku and Bulma while the former is fighting the baby-controlled Vegeta.
Yeah, this is just another costume change for the weakling Saiyan. Bulma!
Don't call me that! And don't act like you know me, Saiyan! You are my enemy, and nothing more! And very soon, your death will be at hand!
Bulma. Baby, I will never forgive you for this.
Okay, wooden dialogue is wooden, but you get the idea. The downside to this incredible idea for a story arc is that Goku, who never really knew his own people outside of Raditz, Vegeta, Nappa, and if you want to count the movies, Turles, Paragus, and Broly, wouldn't have any sense of remorse or guilt for what his ancestors did all those years ago. All he can say is that the Saiyans got what was coming to them, and the few that are still around are atoning for the sins of generations past. If Vegeta were the main character of this arc, seeing as how he was Saiyan royalty, and Baby used Goku as his host like he himself said he should have done, then you'd have something more personal and interesting for one of the only characters in the Dragon Ball series who has a long-running character arc, but the way it turns out leaves a bit to be desired. On top of that, the basic idea for this story arc was ripped right from Plan to Eradicate the Saiyans, an OVA that was based on a DBZ game for the Famicom, though the more fleshed out plot and raised stakes presented by Baby's parasitic nature definitely add a greater element of urgency than the OVA and its remake ever did. Alright, I'm gonna have to cut this short. I'm only halfway through the script of this episode and I already plowed through all the time I've allotted for the week. So in 2 weeks, we'll pick this up with part 2. Okay? See you guys then.